Good evening, dear listeners. Welcome to a tranquil journey through the serene corridors of history. We gather here tonight to embrace a soothing exploration of a topic that, while perhaps seemingly mundane, carries with it the gentle whispers of a time long past. This evening, we will delve into the monotonous yet fascinating history of Byzantine imperial scribe ink preparation protocols and the delicate intricacies of storage inventory logs. As you settle into your comfortable space, I invite you to take a deep breath. Inhale the calming essence of the present moment, and exhale any lingering thoughts or distractions. Allow the weight of the day to softly melt away, as we embark on this gentle voyage into the annals of history. Our goal tonight is not merely to recount facts, but to immerse ourselves in the soothing rhythm of an age where the art of writing was revered, and the preparation of ink was a meticulous craft that demanded patience and precision. Throughout our journey, we will explore the various methods employed by Byzantine scribes to create their ink. Picture the tranquil scenes where skilled artisans, cloaked in the soft glow of candlelight, combined ingredients such as soot, gum arabic, and water. Each mix was a labor of love, a ritual that ensured the words they crafted would endure through the ages. As we meander through these processes, allow the imagery to wash over you like a gentle tide, lulling you into relaxation. We will also take a moment to reflect upon the storage inventory logs that preserved the meticulous records of ink supplies and usage. These logs, often inscribed with painstaking detail, serve as a window into the daily lives of those who dedicated themselves to the written word. Imagine the quiet rooms where these records were kept, the faint scratching of quills on parchment, and the soft rustle of pages turning. Each entry in these logs tells a story of discipline and devotion, echoing softly through the centuries. As we progress, you'll learn how this humble substance was more than just a tool for writing. It was a symbol of power, knowledge, and the connection between the divine and the earthly. The scribes, those guardians of knowledge, worked diligently, crafting not just documents, but the very essence of the empire's thoughts and ideas. The gentle cadence of our exploration will invite you to reflect on the simplicity of these processes, and as we traverse through the meticulous details, I hope you find yourself enveloped in a sense of peace. Let the soothing rhythm of history cradle you like a warm embrace, guiding you toward a state of relaxation. As we draw nearer to the heart of our topic, I encourage you to let your mind drift gently, free from the rush of modern life. Allow the weight of history to settle softly upon your shoulders, bringing with it a sense of calm and tranquility. In these next moments, as we dive deeper into the specifics of ink preparation and the art of record keeping, I invite you to let go of any thoughts that may disturb your peace. Instead, focus on the gentle flow of words, the soft imagery they evoke, and the soothing undertones of our shared exploration. So, dear listeners, let us now transition into the main content of our journey. Allow yourself to be carried away by the gentle waves of history, as we uncover the beautiful monotony of Byzantine imperial scribe ink preparation protocols and the serene world of storage inventory logs. Together, we will find a peaceful rhythm that invites relaxation and sleep, bringing forth the quiet whispers of the past to soothe our present moment. The history of ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs in the Byzantine Empire, specifically concerning the role of the imperial scribe, can be traced back to the early centuries following the establishment of Constantinople in 330 CE. The intricate administrative structure of the Byzantine bureaucracy necessitated the development of standardized practices in the preparation and storage of ink, as these materials were crucial for the documentation of imperial decrees, legal records, and various correspondences. By the late 4th century, under the reign of Emperor Theodosius I, 379 to 395 CE, documentation practices began to formalize. The imperial court was located in the monumental complex known as the Great Palace of Constantinople, which featured extensive administrative offices where scribes conducted their duties. The palace's architecture included vast halls and smaller rooms, each designated for specific administrative functions, including those related to the preparation of writing materials. Records suggest that the early ink was primarily composed of carbon black, derived from soot, mixed with a binding agent such as gum arabic or water. The earliest known reference to ink preparation can be found in the writings of the philosopher and statesman John of Antioch, dated to 405 CE, where he describes the process of creating ink using various natural dyes and binding agents. These early recipes were often recorded in codices, which later became a common practice among imperial scribes. By the 6th century, during the reign of Emperor Justinian I, 527 to 565 CE, the administrative procedures concerning ink preparation had become more refined. The codification of legal texts, notably the Corpus Juris Civilis, mandated a consistent approach to documentation, which included specific instructions for the preparation of ink. The imperial scribe's daily routine during this period typically commenced at dawn, with the scribe first attending to the procurement of materials. This involved a meticulous inventory check of ink supplies, parchment, and writing implements, all of which were stored in designated areas of the scriptorium, a specialized room within the palace complex. The scriptorium itself was an austere environment, characterized by stone walls and minimal furnishings, with large wooden tables for writing and shelves lined with jars containing various ink formulations. Administrative logs from the period indicate that scribes were responsible for maintaining an accurate inventory of ink stocks, which included not only the quantity of black ink but also other colors derived from natural sources. The use of colored inks, such as red and blue, became increasingly popular for highlighting important sections of documents and for decorative purposes. An example of an inventory log from 550 CE reveals the meticulous nature of record-keeping in the scriptorium. The log details the types of ink on hand, including carbon black ink, red ochre ink, and blue indigo ink, along with their respective quantities, stored in earthenware jars. Additionally, it noted the date of preparation, the scribe responsible, and any notable observations regarding the quality of the ink. Such logs were essential for tracking the consumption of resources and ensuring the availability of materials for ongoing administrative tasks. As the Byzantine Empire continued to evolve, so too did the ink preparation protocols. By the 9th century, during the reign of Emperor Basil I, 867 to 886 CE, the administrative practices surrounding ink preparation exhibited further sophistication. The incorporation of additional components, such as vinegar and various plant extracts, was documented as enhancing the longevity and stability of ink. A notable figure during this period was the scribe and scholar Photios I, who contributed to the refinement of writing practices and emphasized the importance of high-quality ink for maintaining the integrity of important documents. Architecturally, the scriptorium underwent changes during the 10th century, reflecting the empire's growing emphasis on written communication. The introduction of large windows improved lighting conditions, which facilitated detailed work by the scribes. In addition, the presence of larger worktables enabled multiple scribes to collaborate on extensive projects, including the copying of religious texts and legal documents. Daily routines of scribes in this period remained largely unchanged, with the preparation of ink still a primary task. Scribes would begin their day by grinding the necessary pigments and combining them with water and binding agents, following prescribed recipes passed down through generations. Once prepared, the ink was tested on scraps of parchment to ensure its consistency and adherence to the surface, a practice documented in various administrative logs. By the turn of the 11th century, under the reign of Emperor Alexios I Komnenos, 1081 to 1118 CE, the Byzantine Empire experienced a resurgence in cultural and intellectual activity, leading to further refinements in ink preparation protocols. The scriptorium expanded its inventory to include a wider array of inks, now utilizing materials such as saffron and other organic dyes to produce vibrant colors. The administrative logs from this period reflect a growing sophistication in the categorization of inks, with detailed annotations regarding their sources and properties. The architectural layout of the scriptorium had also adapted to accommodate the increased demand for writing materials. The space was reorganized to include separate stations for each stage of ink preparation, from grinding pigments to mixing the final product. This division of labor allowed for greater efficiency, as multiple scribes could collaborate simultaneously on different aspects of the process. The daily routines of scribes during the late 11th century included rigorous quality control measures, with ink samples regularly tested for consistency. A series of recorded observations, attributed to the scribe Michael Sellos, detail the importance of maintaining a controlled environment to prevent contamination and degradation of ink quality. Sellos emphasized that the careful preparation and storage of ink is paramount in the preservation of our written heritage. As the Byzantine Empire entered the 12th century, the administrative practices surrounding ink preparation became increasingly formalized. The establishment of specific guilds for scribes and ink makers led to the development of standardized protocols that were rigorously adhered to throughout the empire. The architectural design of scriptoriums became more elaborate, often featuring dedicated spaces for the storage of raw materials, including pigments and binding agents, thus enhancing the overall organization of the ink preparation process. An inventory log from 1150 CE illustrates the level of detail maintained in the record-keeping practices of the time. This log includes not only the types and quantities of ink stored but also the names of the suppliers from whom the materials were obtained. It highlights the importance of establishing reliable sources for high-quality pigments, reflecting the growing market for ink preparation in Constantinople. The daily routines of scribes continued to emphasize the importance of ink preparation, with special attention given to the training of apprentices in the techniques of ink making. This ensured that knowledge was passed down through generations, preserving the integrity of Byzantine documentation practices. A notable figure during this period was the scribe Theophylact Symmachus, who documented the processes involved in ink preparation in his treatises, further solidifying the significance of these practices in Byzantine society. By the late 13th century, the fall of Constantinople to the Ottomans in 1453 marked a significant turning point in the history of Byzantine ink preparation protocols. However, the foundational practices established throughout the centuries persisted, laying the groundwork for future generations. The meticulous administrative procedures and comprehensive inventory logs maintained by Byzantine scribes, while perhaps dry in content, reflect a culture that deeply valued written communication and the preservation of knowledge. In conclusion, the history of Byzantine imperial scribe ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs is characterized by a progression of practices that evolved in response to the administrative needs of the empire. The daily routines of scribes, their architectural environments, and the meticulous record-keeping associated with ink preparation represent a critical component of Byzantine governance and cultural heritage. The legacy of these practices endures, underscoring the importance of documentation in the preservation of history. The construction methods and materials utilized for the preparation of ink in the Byzantine Empire are pivotal to understanding the broader context of administrative practices. The predominant method involved the use of iron gall, a type of ink produced through the interaction of tannin extracted from oak galls and iron salts. The oak galls were harvested from oak trees, primarily Quercus robur and Quercus ilex, which were abundant in the regions surrounding Constantinople. The galls, typically gathered during the months of June and July, were dried and subsequently ground into a fine powder using a mortar and pestle. This powder was then mixed with a solution of water and iron sulfate, FeSO4, which was often procured from local apothecaries or produced in-house by heating iron filings in a solution of vitriol. In terms of construction, the ink processing areas were typically constructed within administrative buildings, such as the Great Palace of Constantinople. The walls were often made of limestone or brick, providing stability and insulation against external moisture. Flooring was usually composed of large stone slabs that were easy to clean, crucial for maintaining hygiene standards in ink preparation spaces. The ratios of stone to brick were approximately 3:1 in many facilities, which were often maintained through periodic inspections conducted by designated overseers, known as the logothetes. The ink processing facilities themselves were often equipped with wooden tables, usually measuring around 1.5 meters in length and 0.75 meters in width, where various ink preparation tasks were conducted. Maintenance procedures for ink production facilities were codified and strictly adhered to, as the quality of ink directly impacted the legibility and durability of administrative documents. Regular cleaning of the workspace was mandated every fortnight, utilizing a mixture of water and vinegar to prevent the buildup of residue from the ink ingredients. Any spillage was to be promptly addressed with absorbent cloths made from linen, as the textiles were deemed less likely to contaminate the ink compared to other materials. Additionally, wooden pestles and mortars were to be sanded annually to ensure a consistent grind of the oak gall powder, with a notable emphasis placed on the prevention of cross-contamination from other materials. Inspections occurred quarterly, with reports submitted to the relevant authorities for further review. Financial records pertaining to ink preparation were meticulously maintained in the form of ledgers, with the earliest known examples dating back to the 6th century. These ledgers documented the costs associated with the procurement of raw materials, labor, and maintenance of facilities. The average cost of iron sulfate in the year 532 CE was recorded at approximately 12 denarii per kilogram, while oak galls fetched around 8 denarii per kilogram. A typical annual expenditure for a mid-sized administrative office could range from 300 to 500 denarii, depending on the volume of ink produced and the scale of operations. It is estimated that the production of a single batch of ink, which typically yielded around 5 liters, would incur costs of approximately 50 denarii in raw materials alone. Personnel involved in the ink preparation process included a variety of roles, each with distinct job descriptions and responsibilities. The chief scribe, or protosyllab, was responsible for overseeing the entire ink production process and ensuring that all protocols were followed. This position required an individual with extensive experience in both the preparation of ink and the administrative requirements of the Byzantine bureaucracy. The protosyllab was typically supported by a team of scribes, known as the hyponyma, who assisted in the actual mixing and grinding of materials. Each hyponyma was expected to have a working knowledge of the ink formulation, as well as the ability to document the quantities of materials used in each batch. Additionally, a dedicated labor force, referred to as the oikonomos, was responsible for the procurement of raw materials and the maintenance of the facilities. They were tasked with managing the inventory of supplies, including the sourcing of oak galls and iron sulfate, and ensuring that all materials met the required quality standards. The oikonomos would often report to the protosyllab on a weekly basis, providing updates on supply levels and any issues encountered during procurement. Technical specifications for the ink produced in the Byzantine Empire were detailed and specific, ensuring uniformity and quality across different administrative offices. The ideal composition of iron gall ink was approximately 60% gallatanic acid, 20% iron sulfate, 15% water, and 5% binding agents such as gum arabic, which was sourced from North African suppliers. The viscosity of the final product was closely monitored, with specifications indicating that the ink should flow smoothly from a quill pen with a diameter of roughly 1.0 to 1.5 millimeters. The ink's pH level was typically maintained between 3.0 and 4.0, which allowed for optimal adhesion to parchment and papyrus while minimizing the risk of deterioration over time. In summary, the Byzantine ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs reflect a structured and methodical approach to administrative practices. The construction methods and materials used in the ink production facilities, along with the maintenance procedures, were designed to ensure the highest standards of quality and consistency. Financial records detailed the costs associated with ink production, while personnel and job descriptions underscored the importance of skilled labor in the process. Finally, the technical specifications of the ink itself highlight the meticulous attention to detail that characterized Byzantine governance and documentation practices. This level of precision in ink preparation not only facilitated effective administration but also contributed to the broader preservation of Byzantine culture and history. The construction methods and materials utilized for the preparation of ink in the Byzantine Empire are pivotal to understanding the broader context of administrative practices. The predominant method involved the use of iron gall, a type of ink produced through the interaction of tannin extracted from oak galls and iron salts. The oak galls were harvested from oak trees, primarily Quercus robur and Quercus ilex, which were abundant in the regions surrounding Constantinople. The galls, typically formed as a response to the presence of gall wasps, were collected during specific seasons, particularly in late summer and early autumn, when they were most mature. This time frame, usually from August to October, was crucial as the galls were at their peak in tannin content, which is essential for the ink's quality. Once harvested, the galls underwent a meticulous preparation process. The initial step involved drying the galls, which heightened their concentration of tannins. After drying, the galls were crushed into a fine powder using mortar and pestle, a process that required significant labor and skill to ensure a uniform consistency. This powder was then combined with iron salts, typically in the form of ferrous sulfate, which was sometimes sourced from local mining operations or trade routes. The precise ratio of gall powder to iron salt was critical. Historical recipes indicate a common practice was to mix 1 part of gall powder with 2 parts of iron salt, alongside water to create the desired fluidity. The mixture was subsequently heated, a process that not only aided in dissolving the components but also initiated the complex chemical reactions that would produce the dark, durable ink. This heating process, typically conducted in ceramic vessels, was closely monitored to prevent overheating, which could degrade the tannins and alter the ink's properties. The resulting ink was then filtered through fine cloth to remove any undissolved particles, yielding a smooth and viscous liquid suitable for writing. The application of iron gall ink can be illustrated through various historical documents from the Byzantine Empire. For instance, the Codex Justinianus, compiled under Emperor Justinian I between 529 and 534 CE, showcases the use of this ink in legal documentation. The richness of the ink allowed for clear and legible inscriptions on parchment, a writing surface made from animal skins that were treated and stretched to create a durable medium for text. The durability of iron gall ink is notable. When properly prepared and stored, it could last for centuries without fading significantly, making it an ideal choice for legal and religious texts that needed to withstand the test of time. Beyond legal documents, iron gall ink was also employed in the creation of illuminated manuscripts, a quintessential aspect of Byzantine artistry. The intricate designs and vibrant colors of these manuscripts often relied on the strong contrast provided by the dark ink against the richly colored backgrounds. For example, the Vienna Genesis, a 6th century manuscript, showcases the use of iron gall ink in combination with gold leaf and natural pigments, serving both an aesthetic and functional role in Byzantine culture. In terms of historical context, the use of iron gall ink in the Byzantine Empire can be traced back to the 4th century CE, coinciding with the rise of Christianity and the subsequent need for extensive documentation of theological works, church teachings, and ecclesiastical records. The establishment of monasteries and scriptoria throughout the empire facilitated the spread of literacy and the standardization of written texts. As the Byzantine Empire expanded, so did the demand for high-quality writing materials, leading to the refinement of ink-making processes. Additionally, the geographic distribution of oak trees in the empire played a significant role in the availability of materials for ink production. The temperate climate of regions like Asia Minor and the Balkans fostered a thriving environment for oak forests, ensuring a steady supply of galls. The Byzantine trade networks also facilitated the import of iron salts from regions such as Thrace and the Levant, further enhancing the quality of ink production. Moreover, the transition from papyrus to parchment as the primary writing surface during the 5th century CE also influenced ink preparation. Parchment required a different consistency and formulation of ink compared to papyrus, necessitating adjustments in the traditional methods of ink production. The shift to parchment not only improved the longevity of written works but also allowed for more intricate designs and a greater variety of inks to be utilized. In summary, the intricate processes involved in the preparation of iron gall ink in the Byzantine Empire reflect the sophistication of administrative and artistic practices during this period. Through a combination of local resources, meticulous preparation techniques, and a rich cultural context, Byzantine ink not only served practical purposes but also played a vital role in the preservation of knowledge and the advancement of art, contributing to the enduring legacy of this remarkable civilization. The construction methods and materials employed in the preparation of ink within the Byzantine Empire were characterized by a strict adherence to protocol and a reliance on locally sourced components. The primary materials utilized included carbon black, derived from the soot of burning organic materials, and various binding agents such as gum arabic, which was extracted from the sap of the acacia tree. The process of acquiring these materials began with the careful selection of suitable sources. For instance, carbon black was often obtained from the soot produced in lamps or during the controlled burning of specific woods, such as oak or pine, which were noted for their high carbon yield. In terms of construction methods, the preparation of ink involved a meticulous process that began with the grinding of the carbon black into a fine powder. This was typically achieved using a mortar and pestle made of stone or ceramic, with the grinding surface measuring approximately 30 centimeters in diameter. The resulting powder was then mixed with water in a proportion of approximately 3:1 by weight, followed by the gradual incorporation of the binding agent, gum arabic. The standard ratio for this mixture was approximately 1 part gum to 4 parts carbon black, which allowed for optimal consistency and adhesion to parchment or papyrus surfaces. Once the ink was mixed, it was stored in containers made from various materials, including glass, ceramic, or metal. The storage vessels were typically cylindrical in shape, measuring about 15 centimeters in height and 7 centimeters in diameter. Containers were often sealed with a cork or wax lid to prevent evaporation and contamination. The importance of proper storage was underscored by the fact that ink could degrade over time, particularly in humid environments, necessitating the use of desiccants such as silica gel or salt to maintain optimal conditions. Maintenance procedures for ink preparation facilities were equally rigorous, focusing on cleanliness and the preservation of materials. Each workspace was required to undergo a thorough cleaning at the end of each day's operations, with all surfaces being wiped down using a cloth soaked in vinegar to eliminate residue and prevent mold growth. Tools used in the ink-making process were to be rinsed in clean water and dried to avoid cross-contamination of different ink batches. Regular audits of materials were conducted bi-weekly to ensure that supplies were sufficient and that the quality of the ink met the imperial standards set forth in the Codex of Ink Preparation, a compendium compiled in 1045 CE under the supervision of the chief scribe, Michael of Amoria. The financial records and costs associated with ink production were meticulously documented, often overseen by a designated treasurer responsible for the imperial scribe's office. In the year 1080 CE, for instance, a detailed ledger recorded that the purchase of 50 kilograms of carbon black amounted to 12 solidi, while 10 kilograms of gum arabic cost approximately 18 solidi. The costs of labor were also accounted for, with scribe assistants earning a daily wage of 2 denarii, which was consistent with the prevailing wages for skilled artisans within the capital, Constantinople. In total, the annual budget for ink production in the year 1080 CE was calculated to be approximately 3,000 solidi, a sum that encompassed raw materials, labor, and maintenance of equipment. This financial oversight was crucial, as the demand for ink fluctuated based on the volume of manuscripts produced per quarter, which ranged from 500 to 1,000 pages, depending on the season and the directives issued by the imperial court. Personnel involved in the ink preparation process held specific job descriptions that delineated their duties and responsibilities. The chief scribe, a prestigious position typically held by an individual with decades of experience, was responsible for overseeing the entire operation, ensuring that all protocols were adhered to and that the quality of ink produced met the established standards. Under the chief scribe, there were typically 2 senior assistants who specialized in the procurement of materials and the maintenance of inventory logs. Their roles included negotiating with suppliers, tracking stock levels, and ensuring that all materials were stored correctly. Additionally, there were several junior scribes and laborers who assisted in the actual mixing and grinding of ink, as well as the cleaning and maintenance of tools and workspaces. The junior scribes were often apprentices who received training in the art of manuscript production and ink preparation, eventually progressing to higher ranks as their skills developed. Each member of the team was expected to keep detailed records of their daily activities, which were later compiled into a comprehensive report for review by the chief scribe. Technical specifications for ink produced in the Byzantine Empire were dictated by the need for consistency and durability. The ideal viscosity of ink was established at a measurement of 1.5 poise, which allowed for smooth application without excessive bleeding on parchment. To achieve this consistency, the pH of the ink was monitored, with a target range of 7 to 8 to ensure that the ink remained neutral and did not compromise the integrity of the writing surface. Furthermore, the color intensity of the ink was quantitatively assessed using a spectrometer, with the desired absorbance level set at approximately 1.2 optical density units. This measurement ensured that the ink would produce clear, legible text that would withstand the test of time. The drying time of the ink was also an important technical specification. Optimal drying time was established at approximately 30 minutes on parchment, which allowed scribes to continue their work without the risk of smudging. In conclusion, the Byzantine ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs represent a meticulous and methodical approach to a seemingly mundane but vital aspect of imperial administration. The construction methods employed, the financial records meticulously kept, the defined roles of personnel, and the technical specifications adhered to reflect a civilization deeply committed to the preservation of knowledge and the advancement of their artistic traditions. The legacy of these practices, though often overlooked, underscores the importance of organization and standards in the production of materials that served as the foundation for the written word in one of history's most significant empires. The construction methods and materials employed in the preparation of ink within the Byzantine Empire were characterized by a strict adherence to protocol and a reliance on locally sourced components. The primary materials utilized included carbon black, derived from the soot of burning organic materials, and various binding agents such as gum arabic, which was extracted from the sap of the acacia tree. The process of acquiring these materials began with the careful selection of suitable sources, predominantly local artisans and traders who specialized in natural substances. Carbon black was typically produced by burning organic materials like wood or oils in a low-oxygen environment, a technique documented as early as the 4th century AD. Artisans often utilized the remains of fruit trees, such as olive or fig trees, which not only provided a rich source of soot but also contributed unique qualities to the ink, including a deep, velvety blackness and improved adhesion to parchment. The burning process would take place in specially designed kilns, where the temperature and oxygen levels were meticulously controlled to ensure the quality of the soot produced. Historical records indicate that this method became increasingly refined by the 6th century, with the establishment of more sophisticated workshops dedicated to ink production. In addition to carbon black, binding agents were essential for the creation of stable and usable ink. Gum arabic, harvested from the acacia tree, was favored for its solubility in water and its ability to form a strong bond with pigments. The harvesting of gum arabic typically occurred between the months of March and June, coinciding with the dry season when the sap flowed most freely. This process involved carefully scoring the bark of the acacia tree to promote sap exudation, which would then harden into resin-like droplets. Once collected, the gum was processed by grinding it into a fine powder and mixing it with water and carbon black to form a smooth, viscous ink. The Byzantine ink-making process was not solely limited to carbon black and gum arabic. Artisans often experimented with additional materials to enhance the properties of their ink. For instance, the use of iron gall ink, which became increasingly popular from the 7th century onwards, utilized tannin extracted from oak galls combined with a ferrous sulfate solution. This ink was particularly valued for its permanence and resistance to fading, making it ideal for official documents and religious texts. The production of iron gall ink involved a multi-step process. First, the galls were harvested from oak trees in late summer. Then, they were crushed and boiled with water to extract the tannins. The resulting liquid was filtered, and ferrous sulfate was added to create a chemical reaction that produced a dark, durable ink. Throughout the Byzantine Empire, the art of ink-making was often closely associated with the work of scribes and illuminators. These skilled individuals were responsible for producing manuscripts, religious texts, and administrative documents, which required not only high-quality ink but also precise techniques in application. The training of a scribe typically began in childhood, with apprentices learning under the guidance of experienced masters in monastic schools or scriptoria. By the 9th century, the use of ink was integral to the Byzantine educational system, as texts were copied and disseminated for both religious and secular purposes. The significance of ink production in the Byzantine Empire extended beyond mere utility. It also played a crucial role in the preservation of culture and knowledge. The codification of texts, particularly during the reign of Emperor Justinian I, 527 to 565 AD, marked a pivotal moment in the history of Byzantine literature. The Corpus Juris Civilis, or the body of civil law, was meticulously transcribed using high-quality ink, ensuring that these foundational legal texts could withstand the test of time. The intricate relationship between local resources, artisan skills, and cultural preservation culminated in a rich tradition of ink-making that would influence subsequent generations in both the Byzantine Empire and beyond. By the 12th century, the knowledge gained from the Byzantine methods had spread to Western Europe, laying the groundwork for the development of new ink formulations and ink-making techniques throughout the medieval period. In summary, the construction of ink within the Byzantine Empire involved a complex interplay of materials, processes, and cultural practices that not only facilitated the production of written works but also played a vital role in the transmission of knowledge and artistic expression. The meticulous attention to detail in sourcing, processing, and application of ink reflects the values of a society deeply invested in the preservation of its literary and legal heritage. The construction methods employed in the production of ink within the Byzantine context were governed by a series of protocols designed to ensure uniformity and reliability in the final product. The primary materials utilized in ink production included carbon black, derived from the incomplete combustion of organic materials, and various binding agents such as gum arabic. The extraction of these components necessitated a rigorous methodology. The carbon black was typically produced from the charring of organic substances, with the most frequently utilized source being wood. The wood was carefully selected based on its density. Hardwoods such as oak and beech were favored due to their ability to produce a finer, more consistent black pigment. The charring process was executed in a controlled environment, often within a sealed clay vessel known as a sarcophagus, measuring approximately 0.5 meters in length and 0.3 meters in diameter. This vessel was heated over a fire of controlled intensity for a duration of 6 to 8 hours. Once the carbon black was obtained, it was ground into a fine powder using a mortar and pestle, crafted from durable stone, typically granite or basalt. This grinding process took a considerable amount of time, often requiring up to 3 hours of continuous labor to achieve the desired fineness, which was crucial for the ink's flow and adherence to parchment or papyrus. The ideal particle size was determined to be approximately 10 micrometers, which allowed for optimal dispersion in the binding agent. The binding agent, often gum arabic, was sourced from the acacia tree. The collection of this resin involved the careful incision of the tree's bark, allowing the gum to ooze out, where it was subsequently harvested. This process was undertaken between the months of May and August, which aligned with the tree's natural sap flow, ensuring a higher yield of quality resin. The quantity of gum arabic required for a standard batch of ink was typically 20 grams per liter of water, ensuring the appropriate viscosity and adhesion properties. In terms of maintenance procedures, the storage and handling of ink were of paramount importance. Ink was typically stored in ceramic containers, which were crafted from locally sourced clay, fired at temperatures exceeding 1000 degrees Celsius to ensure durability. These containers, often measuring about 15 centimeters in height and 10 centimeters in diameter, were sealed with a thin layer of olive oil to prevent evaporation and contamination. The maintenance of these storage vessels involved regular inspections every fortnight, wherein clerks would assess the integrity of the seal and the viscosity of the ink. Should any signs of degradation or clumping be observed, the ink was subjected to a filtration process through fine linen cloth to remove impurities. Additionally, it was customary to transfer the ink into new containers every 6 months to avoid any adverse chemical reactions that could alter the ink's properties. Financial records pertaining to the ink production process were meticulously maintained, reflecting the economic implications of material sourcing and labor costs. The average cost of carbon black in the year 900 AD was approximately 2 denarii per kilogram, while gum arabic fluctuated around 4 denarii for the same quantity. The investment in raw materials for a single batch of ink, approximately 10 liters, therefore amounted to 20 denarii, which included 10 denarii for carbon black and 10 denarii for gum arabic. Labor costs were another significant factor in the financial assessments. Skilled laborers tasked with the grinding of carbon black received a wage of 1 denarius per hour, while those responsible for ink formulation and quality control earned 1.5 denarii per hour. The total labor cost for the production of a 10-liter batch of ink, assuming a total of 15 hours of labor, amounted to 22.5 denarii, bringing the total investment to 42.5 denarii. The personnel involved in the ink production process were categorized into distinct roles, each with specific job descriptions that outlined their responsibilities. The foremost position was that of the scribe master, responsible for overseeing the entire ink production process and ensuring adherence to established protocols. This individual typically had over a decade of experience in the field and was well versed in the nuances of ink formulation and quality assessment. Beneath the scribe master were the ink artisans, who were tasked with the actual production of ink. These artisans were generally required to have completed a formal apprenticeship lasting 5 years, during which they were trained in the intricacies of material sourcing and preparation. Their duties included the grinding of pigments, mixing of binders, and conducting quality control checks. Supporting these core roles, apprentice scribes played an essential part in the production process, assisting with material handling and routine maintenance of equipment. These apprentices typically ranged in age from 12 to 18 years and underwent a structured training program that included both practical and theoretical components of ink preparation. Technical specifications for the ink produced were strictly regulated to ensure uniformity and reliability. The viscosity of the ink was measured using a simple device known as a viscometer, which employed a standardized glass tube of 1 centimeter in diameter and 30 centimeters in height. A sample of ink was allowed to flow through the tube, and the time taken for the ink to travel a distance of 10 centimeters was recorded. The ideal flow time was established at 15 seconds, a benchmark that was consistently referenced during production. Additionally, the color saturation of the ink was quantified using a colorimeter, which measured the absorbance of light at specific wavelengths. The target absorbance value for Byzantine ink was established at 0.8 at a wavelength of 600 nanometers, ensuring that the ink would achieve the desired depth of black when applied to writing surfaces. The pH level of the ink was also monitored, as variations could significantly affect the longevity of the written text. A pH range between 6.5 and 7.5 was deemed optimal for ink durability and compatibility with various writing surfaces. Regular pH testing was conducted, with results logged systematically in the ink preparation records. In conclusion, the Byzantine approach to ink preparation and storage was characterized by a series of methodical processes, each defined by stringent standards aimed at preserving the integrity and quality of written works. The construction methods and materials, meticulous maintenance procedures, comprehensive financial records, clearly defined personnel roles, and precise technical specifications collectively contributed to a legacy of written communication that has endured through the centuries. Such attention to detail in ink preparation not only underscores the significance of written expression in Byzantine society but also highlights the broader cultural commitment to the preservation of knowledge and the importance of documentation in an increasingly complex world. The construction methods and materials utilized in the preparation of ink within the Byzantine Empire were dictated by a number of factors that included availability of resources, regional variations, and the specific requirements of the scribe's work. The primary inks used were carbon-based, with the most common being soot, or lampblack, derived from the incomplete combustion of organic materials. Soot was often collected from the burning of oils, particularly olive oil, which was widely available and provided a consistent source of pigment for ink production. In terms of construction methods, the preparation of ink typically involved a multi-stage process. The first stage began with the collection of raw ingredients. For carbon-based inks, the soot was gathered using a specialized vessel known as a lamp, Greek, lambda-kainu, likeness, which would capture the residue produced from burning oil. The soot was then mixed with a binder. Common binders included gum arabic, which was sourced from the acacia tree, and animal glue, derived from the boiling of animal hides. The exact proportions of soot to binder varied but were generally maintained at a ratio of 1:4 by weight for optimal adhesion and consistency. In addition to carbon-based inks, other colors were produced through the use of natural pigments such as ochre, indigo, and various mineral compounds. The selection of these materials was often dictated by geographic availability. For example, ochre was more prevalent in regions near iron oxide deposits, while indigo was sourced from the plant Indigofera tinctoria, primarily cultivated in the eastern provinces of the empire. Maintenance procedures for ink production facilities were equally meticulous. The workspace, typically a small room or designated area within a scriptorium, required regular cleaning to prevent contamination of the ink. This involved sweeping the floors with a broom made from twigs and periodically washing the work surfaces with water mixed with a small amount of vinegar to neutralize any residual organic material that could alter the properties of the ink. Cleaning schedules were strictly adhered to, with records maintained detailing the date of each cleaning. For instance, on the 15th of May, 1024, a meticulous log entry noted that the work area was cleaned, with a specific focus on the removal of dried ink residue from the stone grinding surface used for pigment preparation. Financial records and costs associated with ink preparation were typically recorded meticulously within the administrative accounts of the scriptorium. The cost of raw materials fluctuated based on market conditions. For example, in 1080, the price of gum arabic was documented at approximately 15 solidi per kilogram, while by 1105, this price surged to 20 solidi due to increased demand and scarcity. The pricing of soot was more stable, typically ranging between 2 and 5 solidi per unit, depending on the quality of the soot collected. In addition to raw materials, labor costs were another significant factor in the financial records. The employment of skilled laborers, or scribes, who specialized in ink preparation, was essential. Records indicate that a skilled scribe could command a wage of 12 solidi per month, while apprentices, who were often engaged in the more labor-intensive aspects of ink preparation, earned approximately 4 solidi per month. Detailed payroll logs were maintained, documenting the names of employees, their roles, and the hours worked. For instance, the payroll for June 1077 listed the following personnel: Georgios, scribe, 12 solidi; Anna, apprentice, 4 solidi; and Simon, laborer, 6 solidi, reflecting the varied roles necessary for maintaining the ink production process. The job descriptions for personnel involved in ink preparation were highly specific and delineated. The lead scribe was responsible not only for overseeing the ink production but also for ensuring the quality of the final product. This included conducting tests to verify the pigment's consistency and drying time. Scribes also recorded detailed observations about the ink's performance on parchment, noting any variations between batches. For example, on the 3rd of April, 1065, a note in the records reported that batch 47 showed excessive bleeding on parchment, likely due to an improper ratio of binder. The role of an apprentice was primarily focused on the preparation of raw materials and the maintenance of the workspace. Apprentices were often tasked with grinding pigments using a mortar and pestle, a process that required considerable physical effort and attention to detail. The specifications for the grinding process were recorded in instructional texts, which mandated that pigments be ground to a fine powder, with a recommended particle size of no more than 100 micrometers to ensure a smooth ink consistency. Technical specifications for ink production were particularly important in ensuring that the ink met the standards required for Byzantine documentation. The viscosity of the ink was a critical parameter, typically maintained within a range of 1,000 to 1,500 centipoise. This viscosity allowed for optimal flow through quills and the avoidance of blockages. Scribes often utilized a viscometer, a rudimentary device comprised of a narrow tube, to measure the flow rate of ink. The flow rate was recorded in seconds, with the ideal ink taking between 10 to 15 seconds to flow through the apparatus. In addition to viscosity, the light fastness of the ink, defined as its resistance to fading when exposed to light, was another technical specification that scribes monitored. Light fastness was tested using a method known as the window test, where ink samples were exposed to sunlight for a period of 30 days. Records from the summer of 1092 indicate that samples from batch 58 showed significant fading after this exposure, prompting an investigation into the quality of the binder used. The storage of ink was another crucial aspect of the preparation protocols. Ink was typically stored in ceramic jars, known as amphorae, which varied in capacity from 5 to 20 liters. These jars were sealed with a cork or wax to prevent evaporation and contamination. The jars were labeled with the date of preparation, the type of ink, and the batch number for easy identification. A storage inventory log was maintained, detailing the quantities of each type of ink on hand. For instance, the inventory from the 25th of December, 1110, indicated that there were 15 liters of carbon black ink, 10 liters of red ochre ink, and 5 liters of indigo ink. Moreover, environmental conditions played a significant role in the storage of ink. The ideal storage temperature was maintained between 15 to 20 degrees Celsius to prevent separation of the pigment from the binder. Temperature logs were routinely recorded, with observations noted such as temperature maintained at 18 degrees Celsius on the 12th of March, 1098. In conclusion, the Byzantine imperial scribe ink preparation protocols were characterized by a rigorous attention to detail across all aspects of production, from the selection of raw materials to the meticulous documentation of financial records and personnel roles. The technical specifications ensured that the ink produced was suitable for the preservation of knowledge, reflecting the broader cultural commitment to documentation in Byzantine society. The processes described herein are emblematic of the bureaucratic precision that underpinned the Byzantine administrative system, serving as a testament to the empire's dedication to maintaining a written record in an increasingly complex world. ### The monotonous history of Byzantine imperial scribe ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs. ### Part 6, Regional Variations and Comparisons. The ink preparation protocols within the Byzantine Empire were not uniform across the vast geographical expanse of this multi-ethnic and multicultural realm. Regional variations arose due to local resources, climatic conditions, and the availability of specific ingredients deemed necessary for ink production. In the northern provinces, such as Thrace and Macedonia, the ink often incorporated local plant resins, which were not as prevalent in the southern areas like Asia Minor, where the primary ingredient favored was carbon black derived from charred organic substances. In Constantinople, the bustling heart of the empire, scribe workshops tended to produce a higher quality ink, leveraging the trade routes that connected them to distant lands. The inks produced here typically featured a finely ground carbon black mixed with refined gum arabic, imported from regions as far-flung as North Africa, which, when combined, created a superior consistency and adherence to parchment. Comparatively, in the more remote provinces, such as those bordering the Black Sea, the inks produced might have included a higher concentration of local clay, which, while less effective for writing, lent a distinctive earthy tone to the final product. The differences were not merely aesthetic, they also had practical implications. For instance, the ink from the eastern provinces tended to dry more slowly, which was suitable for scrolls that required intricate illustrations, while the ink from the western regions dried rapidly, favoring the efficiency of bureaucratic documentation. These regional distinctions were often recorded in the logs maintained by imperial scribes, who noted the specific characteristics of each ink batch, allowing for a detailed inventory that reflected not just the materials but also the scribe's subjective assessment of quality. Part 7. Evolution over different time periods. The evolution of ink preparation in the Byzantine Empire mirrored broader societal changes and technological advancements. Initially, during the early Byzantine period, inks were primarily based on simple combinations of soot and water, a method that remained relatively unchanged from ancient practices. However, as the empire expanded and incorporated various cultures, the sophistication of ink-making began to evolve. By the 6th century, a notable shift occurred with the introduction of more complex formulations. Scribes began to experiment with the addition of various binders and fillers, such as honey and egg whites, to enhance the ink's adhesion properties. The use of these organic materials, while seemingly trivial, marked a significant development in the quest for permanence in writing. The invention of the quill pen during this period necessitated a higher viscosity ink, leading to further refinements in composition. By the late 9th century, the Byzantine Empire saw a flourishing of scholarly activity, particularly during the Macedonian Renaissance. This era brought about an emphasis on the preservation and reproduction of classical texts, which in turn spurred innovations in ink production. The imperial scriptoriums began adopting standardized recipes that included not just carbon black but also vivid pigments derived from minerals, such as ochre and vermilion, for illuminated manuscripts. By the 12th century, the increasing complexity of bureaucratic governance necessitated an even greater variety of ink formulations. The introduction of colored inks for official documents became commonplace, and the protocols for ink preparation were meticulously documented in the storage inventory logs, ensuring that each scribe could replicate the required hue and consistency in accordance with imperial standards. Part 8. Bureaucratic regulations and laws. The Byzantine administrative apparatus was renowned for its complexity, and the regulation of ink production and storage was no exception. The legal framework surrounding these protocols evolved through various decrees and edicts issued by emperors and high-ranking officials. These regulations aimed to standardize the quality of ink used in official documentation, thereby safeguarding the integrity of the empire's written records. One notable edict, the Lex Scriptorium, established in the early 10th century, mandated that all imperial scribes adhere to a detailed set of guidelines governing ink formulation. This included specifications about the proportions of carbon black to water, the acceptable sources of gum arabic, and even the temperature conditions under which ink should be prepared. Violations of these regulations were taken seriously, and penalties ranged from fines to the loss of one's scribing privileges, an outcome particularly feared by those whose livelihoods depended on the written word. The bureaucratic oversight extended to the storage of ink as well. Each imperial scriptorium was required to maintain exhaustive logs detailing the quantities of ink prepared, the dates of production, and the names of the scribes responsible for the preparation. Such records were not merely for accountability but also served as a means of preserving knowledge. Future generations of scribes would refer to these logs to understand the materials and methods that had been deemed acceptable by prior authorities. The meticulous nature of these regulations also reflected the broader Byzantine ethos of order and control over knowledge. The state sought to ensure that no ink, regardless of its origin, could undermine the legitimacy of the imperial documentation. To this end, even the tools used in the preparation of ink, such as mortars and pestles, were subject to scrutiny, with specific materials being preferred for their perceived purity and effectiveness. Hashtag Part 9, Supply Chain and Logistics. The logistical complexities involved in the ink supply chain were a reflection of the Byzantine Empire's expansive trade networks and its reliance on both local and distant resources. The preparation of ink was not merely a matter of mixing ingredients, it involved a detailed understanding of supply chains that could span continents. Local suppliers of carbon black sourced from soot produced in forges or fires, while gum arabic often came via caravans from Arabia or Egypt. The transportation of these materials was governed by a variety of factors, including seasonal weather patterns and the political stability of trade routes. In times of conflict or unrest, the supply of essential ingredients could be disrupted, leading to a temporary shortage of quality ink. Such events were meticulously logged in the inventory records, often accompanied by annotations regarding the potential impact on governmental operations and documentation processes. Furthermore, the role of artisans and merchants in the ink supply chain cannot be overlooked. Specialized merchants known as ink vendors emerged, dealing exclusively in ink and its ingredients. These individuals were responsible for ensuring the quality and consistency of the products they sold. They often established relationships with local scriptoriums, providing not just the raw materials but also guidance on the best practices for ink preparation. The records maintained by these vendors and scriptoriums often included detailed accounts of transactions, allowing for a comprehensive understanding of the economic dynamics underlying ink production. The logistics of storage were equally intricate. Scribes had to ensure that their ink was kept in conditions that minimized degradation. Specific storage vessels, often made from clay or glass, were preferred for their non-reactive properties. The inventory logs included precise details about the types of vessels used, their capacities, and the conditions in which they were stored. Seasonal temperature fluctuations were noted, as these could affect the viscosity and drying time of the ink, necessitating careful planning by the scribes. Hashtag Part 10, Record-keeping methods. The record-keeping methods employed by Byzantine scribes concerning ink preparation were as detailed and systematic as the protocols themselves. Each scriptorium developed its own system of documentation, often influenced by the local administrative practices and the specific needs of its scribes. The most common method involved the use of parchment rolls, where entries were made in a clear, legible script. Each record typically began with the date of preparation, followed by the details of the ink's composition, including the types and quantities of ingredients used. Scribes would often include notes on the outcomes of previous batches, offering insights into the performance of various formulations. Such annotations provided a form of institutional memory, allowing future scribes to learn from their predecessors' experiences. In addition to parchment rolls, some scriptoriums adopted the use of codices, which allowed for more structured entries. These codices were often divided into sections for different types of inks, such as black ink for regular documentation and colored inks for illuminated texts. The organization of these records was paramount, as it provided a quick reference for scribes who needed to prepare ink under time constraints, particularly during periods of heightened bureaucratic activity. Moreover, the importance of ritual in the preparation of ink extended to the record-keeping process itself. Scribes often performed specific rituals before documenting their ink preparations, which they believed would ensure the accuracy and effectiveness of their records. This included a ceremonial washing of hands and the recitation of prayers, which served to underscore the sacred nature of the written word in Byzantine culture. As ink production became more complex throughout the centuries, the logs evolved to include not just production details but also insights into the scribe's artistic choices and the cultural significance of various ink colors. The meticulous nature of these records reveals a profound respect for the written word and an understanding of the role of ink as a vital tool in the preservation of knowledge across generations. In conclusion, the history of Byzantine imperial scribe ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs is a testament to the intricate interplay of artistry, governance, and commerce that defined this remarkable civilization. Through careful examination of regional variations, bureaucratic regulations, supply chains, and record-keeping methods, we can appreciate the profound significance of what may initially appear to be mundane practices. As with many aspects of Byzantine culture, it is often within the minutiae that we find the most telling reflections of an empire's values and priorities. The monotonous history of Byzantine imperial scribe ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs remains a labyrinthine exercise in the annals of bureaucratic minutiae, capturing the essence of Byzantine administrative life through its ink preparations and the associated documentation. As we delve into the intricacies of regional variations and comparisons, the evolution of these protocols across different time periods, the bureaucratic regulations that govern them, the complexities of the supply chain and logistics, and the record-keeping methods employed by the scribes, we uncover layers of detail that, while tedious, are critical to understanding the Byzantine approach to ink preparation and storage. Regional variations and comparisons. The Byzantine Empire, at its zenith, was a mosaic of diverse cultures and practices, each region contributing unique characteristics to the overarching imperial protocols. The cities of Constantinople, Thessalonica, and Antioch, while unified under the imperial banner, exhibited notable differences in their ink preparation techniques and storage methods. In Constantinople, the imperial capital, the preparation of ink was a highly centralized affair. Here, the formula for ink was often meticulously recorded in a series of scrolls housed within the Great Palace. The ink, primarily composed of carbon black mixed with gum arabic, was customarily fortified with a variety of local resins, contributing to its viscosity and drying properties. The imperial scribe, a position both prestigious and charged with responsibility, would often oversee the mixing process, ensuring that the ink met the stringent standards set forth by the Bureau of Imperial Documents. Conversely, in the provinces, such as Thessalonica, local scribes adopted more pragmatic approaches, often utilizing readily available materials. For instance, the use of ochre and iron gall was more common, reflecting the local resources and the less formalized nature of regional bureaucracies. The ink from these regions, while perhaps inferior in quality to that produced in the capital, was nevertheless functional for local administrative needs. Such variations highlight not only the geographic diversity of the empire but also the adaptability of its bureaucratic structures. Antioch, with its rich cultural tapestry influenced by Hellenistic and Eastern traditions, presented an even more eclectic approach to ink preparation. Here, the incorporation of local botanical dyes became prevalent, leading to a vibrant palette of inks that were often utilized for decorative manuscripts. The contrasts in ink production across these regions underscore the fluidity of Byzantine administrative practices, revealing an empire that, while centralized, allowed for localized expressions of bureaucratic identity. Evolution over different time periods. The chronicle of ink preparation in the Byzantine Empire did not exist in a vacuum. It was subject to the ebb and flow of historical events, technological advances, and cultural shifts. The early Byzantine period, following the fall of the Western Roman Empire, witnessed a nascent yet rigidly structured approach to ink production. The formulae were guarded closely, with secrecy surrounding the precise ratios of ingredients. Scribes often trained for years to master the craft, and the documentation of these techniques was often relegated to the margins of other administrative texts, reflecting a burgeoning bureaucratic ethos. As the empire progressed into the Middle Byzantine period, a gradual relaxation of the rigid protocols began to manifest. Increased contact with other cultures, particularly through trade and warfare, led to an influx of new materials and techniques. The introduction of synthetic dyes and new binding agents during this period expanded the palette of inks available to scribes and allowed for greater experimentation. Notably, the use of shellac as a binder became more common, enhancing the durability of ink on parchment and papyrus. By the late Byzantine period, the landscape of ink preparation had transformed dramatically. The rise of urban centers and the proliferation of schools led to a democratization of the scribe's craft. Manuals and treatises on ink preparation began to circulate, often detailing not only the ingredients but also the philosophical underpinnings of color and its significance in manuscript illumination. The bureaucratic regulations that had once dictated the minutiae of ink production began to give way to more flexible standards, as the demand for diverse inks surged in response to the flourishing artistic culture of the time. Bureaucratic regulations and laws. The Byzantine Empire was characterized by an intricate web of laws and regulations governing almost every aspect of life, including the preparation and storage of ink. The administrative edicts issued by emperors and high-ranking officials often contained explicit directives concerning ink production, influenced by both practical considerations and the symbolic importance of written communication. For instance, the Codex Justinianus, part of the Corpus Juris Civilis, included stipulations regarding the purity of materials used in ink production. Scribes were mandated to use only the finest carbon black sourced from specific vendors, ensuring a consistent quality across imperial documents. Moreover, The storage of ink was subject to regulations that dictated the types of containers permissible for use. Clay pots, for instance, were discouraged due to their propensity to absorb moisture, while glass and metal vessels were preferred for their impermeability and ease of cleaning. The penalties for non-compliance were severe. Scribes found using inferior inks or improper storage techniques could face demotion or, in egregious cases, exile from their positions. This strict adherence to bureaucratic regulations ensured a level of uniformity in the documentation that flowed from the imperial offices, reinforcing the authority of the Byzantine state. Furthermore, the establishment of the Bureau of the Secretarium during the reign of Emperor Basil I in the 9th century introduced even more stringent oversight of ink preparation. This bureaucratic body was tasked with the standardization of ink production methods across the empire, facilitating the centralized control of ink supplies and ensuring that all provincial offices complied with the established protocols. Supply chain and logistics. The supply chain for ink production in the Byzantine Empire was a complex system that involved numerous stakeholders, ranging from local artisans to imperial suppliers. The raw materials required for ink preparation, such as carbon black, gums, and various binding agents, necessitated a well-organized logistics network to ensure consistent availability. Carbon black was primarily derived from the burning of organic materials, and its production was often localized. Scribes in urban centers like Constantinople relied on the expertise of specialized artisans who produced high-quality carbon black, which was then distributed to the various bureaucratic offices. The transportation of these materials was facilitated by a network of roads and waterways, with imperial couriers ensuring timely deliveries to avoid disruptions in administrative functions. Gum arabic, on the other hand, was imported from distant regions, primarily North Africa. The procurement of this essential ingredient involved intricate trade agreements and negotiations with merchant guilds, reflecting the broader economic dynamics of the Byzantine Empire. The fluctuations in trade due to geopolitical events, such as conflicts or changes in trade routes, could significantly impact the availability of gum arabic, leading to temporary shortages that necessitated the improvisation of alternative binding agents by local scribes. Storage facilities for ink ingredients were also meticulously organized within the bureaucratic infrastructure. Each regional office maintained an inventory log detailing the quantities of each ingredient, which was regularly updated to reflect usage rates and supply levels. These logs not only served a practical purpose but also played a critical role in the broader bureaucratic accountability mechanisms, ensuring that resources were utilized efficiently and responsibly. Record-keeping methods. The methods employed in record-keeping regarding ink preparation and storage were as intricate as the protocols themselves. Byzantine scribes utilized a variety of techniques to document their activities, ranging from simple lists to elaborate scrolls detailing the entire process of ink preparation. The use of wax tablets was common, especially in the earlier periods. Scribes would inscribe their notes using a stylus, allowing for easy erasure and modification. These tablets served as ephemeral records of daily ink production, enabling scribes to track the quantities of ingredients used and the resulting batches of ink created. However, their transient nature meant that more permanent records were necessary for long-term oversight. As the empire progressed, the shift to parchment and papyrus became more pronounced. The durability of these materials allowed for the preservation of detailed records, including comprehensive inventories that outlined the specific recipes used for different types of ink. These documents often included annotations regarding the quality of the ink produced, with notes on its suitability for various types of manuscripts, ranging from legal documents to religious texts. The meticulous record-keeping practices of Byzantine scribes were not merely functional but also reflective of a broader cultural emphasis on literacy and documentation. The act of recording ink preparation protocols became a form of scholarly pursuit, with some scribes even producing treatises on the subject. These works, while sometimes tedious, provided invaluable insight into the bureaucratic mindset of the Byzantine Empire and the importance placed on the written word. In conclusion, as we explore the intricate tapestry of Byzantine imperial scribe ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs, we uncover a rich and detailed history that transcends mere administrative function. The regional variations, evolution across time, bureaucratic regulations, supply chain complexities, and diligent record-keeping practices collectively paint a picture of an empire deeply invested in the art of documentation. This laborious endeavor, while monotonous, underscores the significance of ink preparation in the broader narrative of Byzantine governance, culture, and identity. The monotonous history of Byzantine imperial scribe ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs, an examination of regional variations, temporal evolution, bureaucratic regulations, supply chain logistics, and record-keeping methods. Part 8: Regional Variations and Comparisons. The Byzantine Empire, with its vast expanse spanning from the Balkans to the Middle East, presented a unique tableau of regional variations in ink preparation and storage protocols. The geographical diversity, climatic conditions, and the availability of raw materials contributed to the distinct practices observed in various provinces. For instance, in the more temperate regions of Asia Minor, scribes often utilized a blend of carbon black derived from the soot of olive oil lamps, mixed with water and a binding agent such as gum arabic. This method yielded a rich, dark ink, prized for its longevity and vibrancy. Conversely, in the arid regions of Egypt, scribes favored a different approach, often incorporating iron gall, a complex ink made from tannin-rich oak galls and iron salts. The high acidity of this ink provided a chemical reaction that produced a very stable writing medium, albeit one that was prone to corrosion of the parchment over time. The use of local materials not only dictated the characteristics of the ink but also influenced the scribe's methods of storage and inventory management. In the provinces of Thrace and Macedonia, where the proximity to the Danube facilitated trade, a hybrid ink formulation emerged, combining elements from both the carbon black and iron gall traditions. This resulted in a lighter ink that was less susceptible to fading in humid conditions, an essential consideration in the moist climate of the region. Furthermore, the local bureaucracy often mandated that each province adhere to specific ink preparation protocols, leading to a fascinating juxtaposition of practices within a relatively small geographic area. Part 9: Evolution over different time periods. The evolution of ink preparation practices in the Byzantine Empire can be traced through several distinct periods, each defined by changing political, economic, and cultural landscapes. During the early Byzantine period, from approximately the 4th to the 7th centuries, ink production was largely artisanal. Scribes operated independently or in small guilds, relying on traditional methods passed down through generations. Inventory logs from this time reflect a rudimentary system of record-keeping, often consisting of simple notations on parchment scrolls, detailing the quantities of ink produced and the materials used. The onset of the Macedonian Renaissance in the 9th century marked a significant shift in bureaucratic oversight, resulting in more standardized protocols. The establishment of central warehouses for ink storage became common, and regulatory measures were instituted to ensure quality control. Edicts issued by the imperial administration mandated specific ratios of ingredients, alongside strict guidelines for environmental conditions under which inks should be prepared and stored. This period saw a marked increase in the use of formalized record-keeping methods, including the introduction of ledgers that recorded not only ink production but also the distribution of ink supplies to various administrative offices and scribes. By the late Byzantine period, particularly in the 12th to 15th centuries, advancements in both ink formulation and storage techniques were influenced by increasing contact with the Islamic world. Scribes began to experiment with new materials, such as synthetic pigments and innovative binding agents, which allowed for greater color variety and improved ink performance. The documentation of these new practices in inventory logs became more detailed, with meticulous notations regarding the source of materials, batch numbers, and even the names of the artisans involved in the production process. Part 10: Bureaucratic Regulations and Laws. The Byzantine bureaucracy was known for its complexity, and the regulation of ink preparation was no exception. The imperial edicts concerning ink production often reflected broader societal concerns regarding quality and authenticity. One particularly noteworthy regulation, issued in the year 1022 by Emperor Basil II, mandated that all ink produced for official state documents must be tested for durability against fading and water damage. This law not only underscored the importance of preserving official records but also ensured that scribes adhered to a standardized formulation that would facilitate uniformity across the empire. Moreover, regulations regarding storage conditions were strictly enforced. Scribes were required to maintain records of their ink storage facilities, which included detailed descriptions of temperature and humidity levels. The use of clay jars for storage was common, and the lids were often sealed with wax to prevent contamination. Regular inspections by imperial officials ensured compliance with these regulations, and failure to adhere could result in severe penalties, including fines or even loss of position. The bureaucratic oversight extended beyond mere production and storage; it encompassed the entire supply chain. Laws dictated how and from whom raw materials could be sourced, often favoring local suppliers over foreign imports to stimulate the economy. This regulatory framework not only ensured a consistent supply of quality materials but also fostered a sense of local craftsmanship that was integral to Byzantine culture. Part 11: Supply Chain and Logistics. The supply chain for ink production in the Byzantine Empire was a multifaceted network that interconnected various regions and involved numerous stakeholders. The procurement of raw materials, such as carbon black, oak galls, and gum Arabic, required careful coordination among local artisans, merchants, and bureaucrats. Each ingredient had its own production timeline and seasonal availability, necessitating a sophisticated logistical framework. The transportation of these materials often relied on the extensive network of roads and waterways that facilitated trade throughout the empire. The use of pack animals for overland transport was common, while river transport offered a more efficient means of moving bulk materials. Inventory logs meticulously documented the quantities of materials received, often noting the date of arrival, the condition of the materials upon receipt, and the name of the supplier. To ensure that ink production met the demands of the imperial administration, scribes were often required to maintain a minimum stock of ink and raw materials. This inventory management practice was essential for maintaining operational continuity, particularly during periods of increased bureaucracy, such as the lead-up to major state occasions or the issuance of new legal codes. The meticulous record-keeping methods employed during this period reflected an acute awareness of the importance of maintaining adequate supplies while minimizing waste. Part 12: Record-keeping methods. The methods employed for record-keeping in the context of ink preparation and storage inventory were as diverse as the inks themselves. In the early periods of the Byzantine Empire, scribes primarily relied on parchment scrolls for documentation. These scrolls were often rolled tightly and stored in designated locations within the scriptorium. The simplicity of this method, however, made it susceptible to deterioration, particularly in humid conditions. As the empire evolved, so too did the techniques for record-keeping. The introduction of codexes, which allowed for the organization of information in a more accessible format, became increasingly popular. This shift facilitated more efficient documentation practices, enabling scribes to track ink production and inventory levels with greater ease. Codexes often featured tables that summarized production quantities over time, providing a clear overview of trends and fluctuations in ink availability. Furthermore, the art of bookkeeping saw notable advancements, influenced by the increased complexity of Byzantine commerce and administration. Scribes began to employ a more systematic approach, utilizing columns and rows to categorize information. The use of ink itself became a point of interest. The color of ink used for record-keeping often varied based on the importance of the document, with red ink signaling critical entries or official decrees. In addition to codification and systematic record-keeping, the Byzantine bureaucratic system also relied heavily on the practice of archiving. Documents pertaining to ink preparation and storage were often copied and preserved in central repositories, ensuring that information could be referenced and audited. These archives became essential for maintaining continuity during transitions of power and for preserving institutional knowledge that was vital for the operation of the empire. In conclusion, the history of Byzantine imperial scribe ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs reflects a rich tapestry of regional variations, evolutionary shifts, bureaucratic regulations, logistical complexities, and meticulous record-keeping methods. Each aspect of this history illustrates the intersection of practical necessity and the cultural significance of ink within the Byzantine administrative framework. As we delve deeper into the minutiae of these protocols, we uncover not only the art of ink preparation but also the broader narrative of a civilization that valued the written word as a means of governance, culture, and identity. #The monotonous history of Byzantine imperial scribe ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs. Part 9, Regional Variations and Comparisons. In the vast expanse of the Byzantine Empire, where diverse cultures and local practices coalesced under the aegis of imperial authority, the preparation and storage of ink exhibited notable regional variations. These discrepancies were influenced by a multitude of factors including local resources, prevailing climatic conditions, and the socio-political landscape that dictated the availability of materials. For instance, in the coastal provinces of Asia Minor, the preparation of ink often relied heavily on the abundant supply of iron gall, derived from the oak trees native to the region. The process was labor-intensive, necessitating the gathering of galls during the late spring and early summer months when the sap was most potent. The local scribes, often trained in the art of ink making through familial lineage, would meticulously crush these galls and subject them to a rigorous fermentation process. The resulting dark liquid was prized for its permanence and depth of color, making it the ink of choice for religious manuscripts and official documents alike. Conversely, in the arid regions of Syria, the scarcity of oak trees led to the adoption of alternative ink formulations, often incorporating soot and water. The soot was procured from the burning of various organic materials, including olive oil refuse and animal fats. This method, while less durable than the iron gall ink, produced a lighter, more fluid ink that was particularly favored for less formal correspondence and ephemeral records. The regional adaptation to available resources not only reflects the ingenuity of local scribes but also underscores the broader socio-economic conditions prevalent in each province. Additionally, the urban centers, such as Constantinople, exhibited their own variations. The imperial capital, with its rich trade networks, facilitated the importation of exotic materials from far-flung regions. Here, scribes had access to a plethora of colors, including the vibrant reds derived from cochineal and the brilliant blues from lapis lazuli. Such opulence in ink production was indicative of the status of the documents being produced, with imperial decrees often penned in richly adorned scripts that showcased the wealth and power of the Byzantine state. Part 10, Evolution over different time periods. The evolution of ink preparation protocols throughout the Byzantine Empire can be segmented into distinct periods, each marked by unique technological advancements and shifts in administrative practices. The initial phase, spanning the early Byzantine period, approximately 330 to 500 CE, was characterized by rudimentary techniques primarily inherited from the Roman tradition. Ink was often prepared in small batches, with scribes relying on personal knowledge and local lore to create their formulae. As the empire progressed into the Middle Byzantine period, 500–1200 CE, a gradual refinement in the preparation of ink was observed. The establishment of centralized bureaucratic institutions necessitated the standardization of practices. This period saw the emergence of detailed manuals and treatises on ink preparation, often authored by prominent scholars and scribes. These texts codified the processes for ink production, detailing specific ratios of ingredients, optimal fermentation times, and appropriate storage conditions. Such documentation not only served as a guide for contemporary scribes but also provided a historical record for future generations. By the late Byzantine period, 1200 to 1453 CE, the art of ink making had reached a level of sophistication that incorporated both scientific inquiry and artistic expression. The introduction of alchemical principles into the preparation of ink led to the experimentation with various additives that enhanced the viscosity and longevity of the ink. This era also witnessed the rise of specialized ink manufacturers, who supplied large quantities of ink to the burgeoning bureaucratic apparatus of the empire. The proliferation of ink types, ranging from common writing inks to luxurious illuminated inks, reflected the expanding demands of a complex administrative system, where the written word became an essential tool for governance. ###### Part 11 Bureaucratic Regulations and Laws. The Byzantine Empire, known for its intricate bureaucracy, instituted a series of regulations governing the production and storage of ink. These regulations were often enshrined in imperial edicts, which outlined the acceptable practices for ink preparation and the responsibilities of state-appointed scribes. Such laws were designed to maintain the integrity of official documents and ensure uniformity across the empire. One notable regulation was the Lex Scriptoris, a comprehensive codex that delineated the materials permissible for use in ink preparation. The Lex mandated the use of specific types of iron gall and prohibited the inclusion of unauthorized additives that could compromise the quality of the ink. Violations of these regulations could result in severe penalties, including fines or even the loss of scribe privileges. This emphasis on quality control underscored the importance of legibility and durability in official documents, which often bore legal weight. Furthermore, the Byzantine administration instituted a series of inspections to monitor compliance with these regulations. Imperial inspectors, often drawn from the ranks of the legatii, administrative officials, were tasked with visiting scriptoriums to evaluate the methods employed by scribes. These inspections were not merely punitive, they also served an educational purpose, as inspectors would often provide guidance and share best practices gleaned from other regions. ########Part 12 Supply Chain and Logistics. The logistics of ink production and distribution within the Byzantine Empire were complex and multifaceted. The supply chain was underpinned by a network of local artisans, merchants, and state-controlled resources. The initial procurement of raw materials, such as iron gall, soot, and various colorants, was crucial to the ink production process. Local markets played a vital role in this supply chain, with merchants specializing in the trade of specific ink-related materials. The transportation of these materials across the empire posed significant challenges, particularly given the diverse geography and varying infrastructure. Rivers and trade routes facilitated the movement of goods, but the reliance on pack animals and caravans often resulted in delays and disruptions. To mitigate these issues, the Byzantine state established a series of depots strategically located along major trade routes, where raw materials could be stockpiled and distributed as needed. This logistical foresight ensured that scribes had access to the necessary ingredients for ink preparation, regardless of regional scarcity. Moreover, the imperial administration maintained a centralized inventory system that tracked the production and distribution of ink across the empire. This system was meticulously recorded in extensive ledgers, which detailed quantities produced, sources of materials, and allocation to various scriptoriums. These logs were often maintained in triplicate to ensure accuracy and facilitate audits by imperial officials, thereby reinforcing the accountability of those involved in the ink supply chain. Part 13, Record-Keeping Methods. The methods of record-keeping employed by Byzantine scribes in the context of ink preparation and inventory management were as varied as the inks themselves. At the most basic level, scribes utilized wax tablets and styluses to maintain logs of ink production. These tablets allowed for quick notations and could be erased and reused, making them a practical tool for day-to-day record-keeping. However, as the complexity of ink production grew, so too did the sophistication of record-keeping methods. The introduction of parchment and the widespread use of codices allowed for more permanent records to be kept, facilitating the documentation of ink recipes, storage inventories, and compliance with bureaucratic regulations. Scribes often employed a systematic approach, organizing their records by date, ingredient, and batch number, allowing for easy reference and tracking over time. In certain instances, the use of ink itself became a part of the record-keeping process. Scribes would often pen their logs in the very inks they produced, thus creating a tangible connection between the documentation and the materials described. This practice not only served practical purposes but also symbolized the artistry and labor invested in the ink-making process. Furthermore, the transition to more formalized bureaucratic record-keeping in the late Byzantine period included the development of specific forms and templates for documenting ink production and inventory. These forms, often standardized across scriptoriums, facilitated consistency in reporting and aided in the communication of information between different administrative levels. The meticulous nature of these records ensured that the Byzantine Empire maintained a comprehensive understanding of its ink production capabilities, which was essential to the functioning of its vast bureaucracy. Conclusion. In summary, the history of Byzantine imperial scribe ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs is a rich tapestry woven from regional variations, evolving practices, stringent regulations, complex supply chains, and meticulous record-keeping methods. Each of these elements contributed to the overarching narrative of an empire that valued the written word as a cornerstone of governance and culture. The intricate details surrounding ink preparation, though seemingly mundane, reveal deeper insights into the socio-economic dynamics of the Byzantine Empire, illuminating the significance of this craft in the broader context of imperial administration and cultural heritage. The monotonous history of Byzantine imperial scribe ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs. Part 10, Regional Variations and Comparisons. In the vast expanse of the Byzantine Empire, which at its zenith encompassed territories across Europe, Asia, and Africa, the preparation and storage of ink were not uniform but rather exhibited distinct regional variations. These differences are essential to understanding the broader context of Byzantine administrative practices and the implications for communication and record-keeping. In the western provinces, such as Italy and parts of the Balkans, the ink preparation process often leaned towards the use of local materials. The use of carbon black derived from burnt wood or animal bones was prevalent among the scribes of Italy, who also incorporated a variety of natural gums such as gum arabic to enhance the ink's viscosity. In contrast, in the eastern regions, particularly in Anatolia and the Levant, the incorporation of plant-based dyes, such as those derived from the indigo plant or various fruits, was more common. These regional preferences were not merely a reflection of local resources but also indicative of cultural influences and trade connections that shaped each province's administrative practices. Comparative studies of ink recipes reveal that while the general principles of ink preparation remained consistent, namely the combination of pigment and binder, the specific materials and methods employed were often adapted to local conditions. For instance, while the ink of the western provinces might have been more prone to fading due to higher humidity levels, the eastern inks, enriched with tannins from local plants, offered superior longevity. Such variances necessitated that scribes adapt their storage methods as well. In the humid climes of the Balkans, inks were often stored in sealed earthenware vessels, while in the arid Levant, simple cloth pouches sufficed. Part 11: Evolution over different time periods. The evolution of ink preparation protocols within the Byzantine Empire can be traced through a chronological lens, revealing a transformation influenced by technological advancements, trade routes, and shifts in bureaucratic needs. During the early Byzantine period, approximately 330 to 700 AD, ink was primarily a rudimentary concoction, with scribes relying on straightforward mixtures of soot and water. The simplicity of these early inks reflected the less complex bureaucratic structures of the time, which required only basic documentation for administrative purposes. However, as the empire expanded and its administrative needs grew more intricate, particularly during the Middle Byzantine period, 700 to 1204 AD, the sophistication of ink preparation evolved concurrently. The introduction of new materials through trade, such as high-quality dyes from the Far East, enabled scribes to experiment with colors and formulations that improved both the aesthetic appeal and durability of their inks. The incorporation of iron gall ink during this period marked a significant technological leap. This ink, derived from the tannins found in oak galls, provided a rich, dark color that has proven to be remarkably permanent. Consequently, the bureaucratic documentation required greater precision, and with it, the need for more reliable ink became paramount. The late Byzantine period, 1204 to 1453 AD, saw further refinement in ink preparation as the empire faced new challenges. The Fourth Crusade and subsequent fragmentation of the empire led to changes in trade dynamics and material availability. Scribes had to adapt their recipes to compensate for shortages, often substituting local materials and employing innovative techniques to maintain the quality of their ink. The development of standardized ink recipes became more pronounced, perhaps as a response to the increasing complexity of administrative documentation necessitated by a more fragmented political landscape. Part 12: Bureaucratic Regulations and Laws. The Byzantine Empire was characterized by extensive bureaucratic oversight, which extended to the preparation and storage of ink. Various regulations and laws were established to ensure uniformity and quality in the ink used by imperial scribes, reflecting a commitment to maintaining the integrity of official documents. One notable legal edict was the Edict of Ink Standards, issued by Emperor Justinian I, which mandated that all official documents must utilize a specific formula for black ink, comprising a mixture of carbon black, gum arabic, and water. This decree not only aimed to standardize documentation but also intended to prevent forgery, as variations in ink composition could be easily detected. The edict further stipulated that ink must be prepared in designated workshops, overseen by appointed officials known as ink masters, who were responsible for ensuring adherence to the prescribed standards. In the provinces, local governors were charged with enforcing these regulations, conducting inspections of scriptoriums, and ensuring that scribes were adhering to the established protocols. Failure to comply with these regulations could result in severe penalties, including fines and, in extreme cases, imprisonment. The bureaucratic layers involved in monitoring ink preparation highlight the significance placed on the integrity of written communication within the Byzantine state. Part 13: Supply Chain and Logistics. The supply chain for ink production in the Byzantine Empire was a complex web of local and regional interactions, reflecting the empire's vast territorial expanse. The logistics of sourcing raw materials, transporting them to scriptoriums, and ensuring their availability for scribes involved numerous stakeholders, including merchants, local producers, and government officials. The procurement of carbon black, for instance, was heavily reliant on local artisans who specialized in the production of soot through controlled burning processes. This material was often transported to urban centers where it was mixed with other components to create ink. Regional variations in the availability of materials necessitated a flexible supply chain. For example, areas rich in natural resources, such as the forests of Asia Minor, ensured a steady supply of quality carbon black, while regions lacking such resources had to rely on trade networks to obtain necessary components. The logistics were further complicated by the bureaucratic demand for consistency and quality, leading to the establishment of trade routes specifically for the transportation of ink materials. Records from the period indicate that merchants were required to carry certification of quality for the materials they transported, which would be inspected at various checkpoints throughout the empire. The role of the Imperial Logistics Corps became essential in managing these supply chains, overseeing the allocation of resources and ensuring that ink production met the evolving needs of the Byzantine bureaucracy. Part 14: Record-Keeping Methods. The Byzantine Empire's commitment to meticulous record-keeping extended to the documentation of ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs. Scribal practices evolved alongside the demands of administration, leading to a variety of methods for recording ink recipes and quantities. In the early periods, records were often maintained on wax tablets, which allowed scribes to jot down ink formulas and inventory counts swiftly. However, as the demand for permanence increased, particularly with the adoption of parchment, the recording of ink preparation became more formalized. Scribes began to create dedicated inventory logs, meticulously detailing the ingredients used, the proportions, and even the dates of preparation. These logs serve not only as operational documents but also as historical records, providing insight into the evolution of ink preparation practices over time. The introduction of the codex format, an innovation that transformed the presentation of written records, also impacted the way ink recipes were compiled. Scribes began to compile collections of ink recipes, including annotations on variations and local adaptations, often bound together in a single volume for easy reference. Such compilations reveal the collaborative nature of ink preparation, as scribes shared knowledge across regions and generations. Moreover, the role of the ink archivist emerged as a specialized position within the imperial bureaucracy, responsible for maintaining these records and ensuring that protocols were followed. The archivist would conduct regular audits of both ink stocks and preparation logs, often issuing reports to higher authorities detailing discrepancies and compliance. This layer of bureaucratic oversight further underscores the significance attributed to ink quality and preparation within the Byzantine administrative framework. In conclusion, the Byzantine imperial scribe ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs encapsulate a rich tapestry of historical practices that reflect the complexities of administration, regional variations, and the evolution of materials and methods over time. Through meticulous record-keeping, bureaucratic regulations, and a robust supply chain, the empire maintained a commitment to the integrity of its written communication, ensuring that its vast administrative apparatus functioned effectively. The study of these mundane yet essential practices contributes to our understanding of the Byzantine Empire's legacy and its impact on subsequent civilizations. The history of Byzantine imperial scribe ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs is a topic that, while seemingly mundane, reveals much about the administrative and cultural practices of the Byzantine Empire. This discussion will delve into minor historical figures who played critical roles in the formulation and documentation of these protocols, specific case studies that highlight key moments in the evolution of ink preparation, comparative analyses with other regions, notable archaeological findings, and fabricated yet plausible primary source quotations that reflect the bureaucratic nature of this intricate subject matter. ####minor historical figures and their roles. In the Byzantine Empire, the role of the scribe was not merely one of transcription, it encompassed a wide range of responsibilities, particularly concerning the preparation and preservation of ink. One such figure, Michael of Antioch, a scribe operating in the 12th century, is often overlooked in the grand narratives of Byzantine history. His meticulous logs reveal insights into the specific recipes used for preparing various inks, such as the famous carbon black ink known as Scriptorium Inca, which was derived from the soot of burnt oil lamps mixed with gum arabic and water. Michael noted in his inventory logs the quantities of each ingredient utilized, contributing to an understanding of regional variations in ink preparation. Another notable figure is Anna Comnena, the daughter of Emperor Alexios I Comnenus, who, in her historical work Alexiad, mentions the importance of ink in the preservation of knowledge. While her focus was primarily on the political and military affairs of her time, her passing references to the scribes and their work underscore the integral role ink played in maintaining the fabric of Byzantine society. Hashtag specific case studies with dates. One case study that exemplifies the ink preparation practices of the Byzantine Empire occurred in 1025 AD when the imperial scriptorium at the Great Palace of Constantinople underwent significant reforms. Under the direction of the then Logothete, a title referring to the head of the imperial chancellery, new guidelines for ink preparation were instituted. The protocols mandated the use of high-quality gall nuts, which were to be harvested only during specific phases of the lunar cycle to ensure optimal tannin levels for ink production. This reform was documented in the Chrysabule, a decree issued by Emperor Romanos III Argyros, which emphasized the necessity of maintaining a consistent quality of writing materials for official documents. Another important instance occurred in the late 10th century, specifically around 979 AD, when a series of archival documents were produced for the Church of Saint Sophia. These documents required a special ink known as cinnabar ink, which was derived from mercuric sulfide. The meticulous preparation of this ink was recorded by the scribe Theophylact, who described the labor-intensive process of grinding the mineral and mixing it with egg whites to achieve the desired viscosity and vibrancy of color. The logs from this period also indicated the careful storage methods employed to preserve the ink, which involved sealing containers with wax to prevent contamination and evaporation. Hashtag comparative analysis with other regions. When comparing Byzantine ink preparation methods with those of contemporary cultures, it is essential to note the significant differences in ingredients and techniques. For example, in the Islamic Golden Age, scholars used a variety of natural dyes and pigments sourced from plants and minerals, resulting in a rich array of colors. The use of indigo and saffron to produce vibrant blue and yellow inks, respectively, starkly contrasts with the more monochromatic tendencies of Byzantine ink, which predominantly utilized carbon black and occasionally iron gall. In Europe during the same period, ink preparation was quite rudimentary, often relying on simple recipes that involved soot and water. While the Byzantine Empire had developed a more sophisticated approach to ink, with a clear emphasis on documentation and quality control, Western European scribes were still engaged in a more haphazard method of ink production. This disparity can be traced back to the Byzantine emphasis on bureaucracy and administrative efficiency, which necessitated a higher standard for their writing materials, thus influencing their ink preparation protocols. Hashtag archaeological findings and interpretations. Numerous archaeological findings have contributed to our understanding of Byzantine ink preparation and storage. In excavations at the site of the ancient city of Ephesus, researchers uncovered several ceramic jars that were believed to have once contained ink. These jars, dated to the 11th century, were found alongside remnants of gall nuts and other organic materials used in the ink-making process. Analysis of these findings revealed that the jars were often inscribed with the names of the scriptorium where they originated, indicating a system of accountability and traceability that was crucial for maintaining the quality of ink. Another significant discovery was made at the monastery of St. John the Theologian on Patmos, where ancient manuscripts revealed evidence of ink recipes written in the margins. These recipes, dating to the 12th century, included detailed instructions for mixing various ingredients, such as crushed snail shells for a unique iridescent effect. Such findings offer invaluable insights into the experimental nature of Byzantine scribes, who were not only transcribers but also innovators in their craft. #### Primary source quotations, invented but plausible. To further illustrate the bureaucratic mindset surrounding ink preparation, we can look at several invented yet plausible primary source quotations that could have emerged from the Byzantine administrative milieu. 1. In the year of our Lord 1025, it is decreed that all gall nuts sourced for ink must be harvested upon the waxing of the moon, lest the quality of our writing materials suffer and our decrees be rendered illegible. Logothete Michael, Imperial Decree on Ink Production. 2. Let it be known that only the finest carbon black shall be employed in our documents, for the clarity of our words shall echo through the halls of time, unmarred by the folly of inferior inks. Scribe Theophylact, Commentary on Writing Materials. 3. The pursuit of knowledge is sacred, and thus the ink with which we inscribe our thoughts must reflect the purity of our intentions. Cinnabar, when properly prepared, shall illuminate the truth as the sun does the earth. Anna Komnena, Reflections on Ink and Knowledge. 4. By the authority vested in me, I declare that all scribes must maintain meticulous logs of ink preparation, for the legacy of our empire rests upon the legibility of our records. Emperor Romanos III, Edict on Administrative Practices. 5. In the quiet hours of the night, as the scribes labor over their scrolls, let them remember that the ink they prepare today will be the voice of history tomorrow. Michael of Antioch, Reflections on the Scribe's Art. #### Conclusion. In summary, the Byzantine imperial scribe ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs offer a fascinating yet often overlooked glimpse into the administrative practices of the Byzantine Empire. Through the examination of minor historical figures, specific case studies, comparative analyses with other regions, archaeological findings, and fabricated primary source quotations, we can glean a comprehensive understanding of how ink preparation was not merely a technical process but a vital component of the empire's bureaucratic framework. The intricacies of these protocols, while perhaps tedious to some, serve as a reminder of the diligence and care that characterized Byzantine scholarship and governance. It is in the minutiae of such historical narratives that we find the foundation of an empire's legacy, one that was built upon the careful crafting of words and the preservation of knowledge through the humble yet essential medium of ink. The preparation and storage of ink during the Byzantine Empire was not merely a mundane task but a critical component of the operation of imperial scribes. The protocols surrounding ink preparation and storage not only reflect the technological advancements of the time but also highlight the roles of minor historical figures who contributed to the development and maintenance of these practices. The Byzantine imperial scribes' ink preparation protocols can be viewed through the lens of various specific case studies, revealing the intricate processes and occasional mishaps that shaped their evolution over time. Consider, for instance, the case of a lesser-known figure, scribe Athanasius of Constantinople, whose detailed logs from the year 1023 provide insight into the meticulous nature of ink preparation. Athanasius recorded an extensive inventory of materials necessary for creating ink, which included gallnuts, vitriol, and the ever-important gum arabic. These items were not merely collected but were subjected to rigorous standards of quality control. Athanasius noted in his inventory log, "The gallnuts must be harvested upon the rising of the second moon post-equinox, and only those that possess a firm, rich hue shall be deemed worthy for imperial use." Moreover, the role of intermediaries in the trade of these materials cannot be overlooked. Minor merchants, often operating in the shadow of larger dynasties, were responsible for sourcing the necessary components for ink production. A merchant named Theodorus, for instance, wrote in a letter dated 1015, "It is with great pride that I present to you a selection of the finest vitriol from the shores of the Aegean, for only through its purity can the imperial scribes achieve the deep black they so desire." This correspondence underscores the interconnectedness of trade and ink preparation, as well as the reliance on the quality of materials sourced from diverse regions. The case study of the ink preparation protocols from the year 1035 during the reign of Emperor Michael IV reveals further intricacies. Imperial scribe Georgios, another minor figure, documented a catastrophic event in which a batch of ink was spoiled due to improper storage methods. His account states, "On the eve of the feast of St. Nicholas, it was discovered that the ink, stored in a poorly sealed clay vessel, had been contaminated by moisture, rendering it unusable for the sacred transcription of the Gospels." This incident highlights the critical importance of storage conditions and the vigilant oversight required to maintain the integrity of ink supplies. Comparative analysis with other regions, particularly the Islamic caliphates and Western European kingdoms, sheds light on the unique practices of Byzantine ink preparation. While Byzantine scribes were known for their meticulous adherence to tradition, Islamic scribes often embraced more fluid methodologies, incorporating diverse ingredients such as saffron and sugar to enhance the properties of their ink. A noted scholar from Baghdad, Al-Jaiz, remarked, "The best ink must not only be dark but must also flow with the grace of a river, a quality achieved through the addition of natural sweeteners." This approach contrasts sharply with the Byzantine focus on longevity and legibility, revealing a cultural divergence in the priorities of scribes across different regions. Archaeological findings have provided significant insights into Byzantine ink preparation practices. Excavations at the site of an ancient scriptorium in the heart of Constantinople yielded numerous artifacts related to ink production, including remnants of gallnuts and several clay vessels used for storage. The analysis of these artifacts, as reported in the journal Byzantine Studies, suggests that the scribes utilized a standardized method of ink preparation that involved boiling the gallnuts in water before mixing them with vitriol in precise quantities. This method, while effective, required careful monitoring to avoid the creation of toxic fumes, as noted in a safety manual unearthed alongside the scriptorium. The manual detailed the dangers of inhaling the vapors released during the ink-making process, advising scribes to work in well-ventilated areas, stating, "He who prepares ink must ensure that the breeze flows freely, lest he fall into a stupor akin to that of the slumbering hen." Such precautions reveal a level of awareness regarding workplace safety that is often overlooked in historical accounts, emphasizing the everyday realities faced by Byzantine scribes. In terms of storage inventory logs, the Byzantine scribes maintained comprehensive records detailing the quantities and qualities of ink produced. A notable entry from a log dated 1042 states, "From the harvest of the gallnuts this year, we have procured 15 pounds of the finest quality, yielding a vibrant black when properly processed. However, it must be noted that 3 pounds have been deemed unsatisfactory due to infestation by insects." These logs serve not only as a means of tracking inventory but also as a tool for improving future production methods, as scribes could analyze past successes and failures to refine their practices. The emphasis on record-keeping extended to the management of ink supplies across different regions of the Byzantine Empire. A document from the year 1050 details the distribution of ink supplies to various provincial scribes, highlighting the logistical challenges faced in ensuring that all imperial outposts were adequately supplied. The log notes, "To the scriptorium of Thessalonica, we dispatched 10 jars of black ink, with the warning that they must be stored in a cool, dry place, lest they suffer the same fate as last year's shipment." This underscores the importance of communication and organization in maintaining the flow of materials necessary for the empire's scholarly and administrative functions. In addition to the practical aspects of ink preparation and storage, the aesthetic qualities of the ink were also a point of pride among Byzantine scribes. The use of various additives, such as finely ground charcoal or even crushed gemstones, was employed to enhance the luster and depth of the ink. Scribe Andronikos, in a letter to a friend in the year 1065, boasted, "My ink, infused with the essence of crushed lapis lazuli, is so dark and rich that it has been said to rival the night sky." Such embellishments were not merely for show, they reflected the scribe's desire to create works of lasting beauty that would endure through the ages. The careful formulation of ink recipes was often passed down through generations, creating a tradition that emphasized both skill and knowledge. A passage from a fictional but plausible primary source, The Art of Ink, a Scribe's Manual, insists, to concoct the perfect ink, one must possess not only the ingredients but also the wisdom of the ages, for it is the heart that breathes life into the written word. This notion of inherited wisdom highlights the cultural significance of ink preparation and the respect afforded to those who mastered the craft. In conclusion, the Byzantine imperial scribe ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs reveal a complex web of practices that were essential to the functioning of the empire. Through the examination of minor historical figures, specific case studies, comparative analyses, archaeological findings, and primary sources, we gain a comprehensive understanding of the meticulous processes involved in producing and storing ink. While these details may seem tedious, they serve to illuminate the intricate and often overlooked aspects of Byzantine scholarly life, providing a glimpse into a world where even the preparation of ink was imbued with significance. And so, dear listeners, we come to the end of our tranquil journey through the often overlooked yet fascinating world of Byzantine imperial scribe ink preparation protocols and storage inventory logs. Thank you for accompanying me on this soothing exploration, where we unravel the intricate threads of history that have long since faded into the shadows of time. Throughout this serene narrative, we've delved into the meticulous processes that ancient scribes undertook to create ink, an essential tool for preserving the wisdom and knowledge of their age. We've wandered through the halls of imperial archives, where delicate logs recorded the exacting standards and methods of ink preparation, and we've marveled at the dedication and artistry that went into every drop. These seemingly mundane details, once vital to the functioning of an empire, remind us of the beauty and complexity that lay in the routine, in the everyday practices of those who came before us. As we reflect on this journey, let us remember the care and precision that defined the lives of those Byzantine scribes. Their commitment to their craft echoes through the centuries, inviting us to appreciate the simple yet profound act of writing, a means of connection across time and space. Just as they preserved their thoughts and stories, may you find comfort in your own reflections as you drift off to sleep, carrying with you the weight of history balanced gently with the lightness of dreams. As you settle into a restful slumber, I wish you a night filled with peace and tranquility. May your dreams be as rich and vibrant as the inks once used to inscribe the knowledge of old, filling your mind with the colors of creativity and imagination. Remember, each time you close your eyes, you embark on a journey all your own, one that takes you to places where the boundaries of time dissolve and the essence of history cradles you in its gentle embrace. Should you wish to revisit this calming narrative, you are more than welcome to replay it, allowing the soothing cadence of the words to guide you once more into a state of relaxation. There is no rush. The tales of the past are here for you to enjoy at your own pace, whenever you feel the need to reconnect with the serenity of history. With that, dear listeners, I wish you a peaceful good night. May you find comfort in the stillness of the night and awaken refreshed, ready to embrace the wonders of a new day. Sweet dreams await you, and I look forward to our next soothing journey together.